Thank you so much, Katrin. It's awesome to be here. As well as Katrin, thank you so much to everyone joining us today. I'm super excited for this next session, which is, of course, the pitching. To those who've joined before, this might be one of your favorite parts, and so it's an honor to share this with you. And so excited to share, the ecosystems presenting today. To introduce it further, especially to those who haven't joined before, or if this is your first time joining the Ecosystem Summit. To introduce this panel, this session, welcome again everyone that's joining us to the 6th edition of the Startup Ecosystem Summit. In this session, we're having ecosystem developers from around the world present their ecosystems. Each speaker will have 6 minutes to pitch. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A and make sure that it's addressed to panelists and all so everyone can see. And of course, to start this off, hold on as I will share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. You might have guessed it based on what I'm sharing. Our next ecosystem is from the land down under, specifically in Adelaide in Australia. And we will hear more about their local startup ecosystem from Doc Judy Halliday, the COO of the Office of the South Australian Chief. While we wait for Doc Judy to join us as a panelist, here's some interesting information about Adelaide's ecosystem based on StartupBlink's rankings. So as you can see, based on what I'm showing you here, Adelaide is 239th worldwide, 7th in Australia, and 7th in Australia and Oceania, the region, and 5th in Australia. So I see Judy is with us today. Hi, Judy. So I'll let you take the stage. Take it away. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us, and it's a great opportunity, I think, for us to talk about Adelaide, as you pointed out, in the land down under. I'm not sure how I can share my screen, but maybe Katrin can share my presentation, which I sent through earlier, because I'm not seeing an ability here to share the screen. Oh, wait a minute. I think I found it.
Yes, yeah, I just turned it on. Sorry.
No, it says disabled share when I click on it. Here we go. Yep, here we go. Oh, can everyone see my screen? Because I can't.
There's a black screen that's covering it currently, Judy.
Can you see it? See it?
Yes, we can see it shared, but there's a screen that's covering the presentation.
Hang on, is that better?
Yes, amazing.
Okay, well, now I can't see you, so that's probably a good thing for me, at least. Yes, so thank you very much for having us here to present to you. I'm really excited to talk to you about the current state of the Adelaide startups ecosystem. Before I do start talking about that, what I want to do is acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the land of the Kaurna people in Adelaide, South Australia, and the Adelaide Plains. And we really recognise their continuous inhabitation of this land for probably more than 60,000 years. They are the state's first people, and we recognise they're the traditional owners and occupants of the land and have a very strong cultural and personal attachment to the land and water of South Australia. What I might do is kind of give you a bit of orientation. Where is South Australia? You might be asking yourselves. Well, obviously it's in Australia. It's neither on the east coast nor the west coast of Australia, but in central Australia, if you like, still on the coastline. Adelaide sits right on the Great Australian Bight. There's a map here of the city that you can see. We have the ocean on one side and the mountains on the other, or hills. They're not really mountains, so it has to be said, hills on the other side. So a bit of a geographically constrained city in many ways. The population of Adelaide is quite small. There's approximately 1.3 million people live in Adelaide. The total population of the state of South Australia is about 1.7 million. So the vast majority of people live in Adelaide, and then most of the rest of the population is very well spread out across a very large piece of land, not dissimilar to many other Australian cities. I think you can see in this picture here that where we've got these blue dots, we've got a number of different ecosystems or different precincts or districts that have been set up over many years. The South Australian government has had a very long-term focus on building an innovation ecosystem in the state. We understand the need for the ecosystem in order to drive new and improved businesses developing products and services for global markets. But we started from a very early stage and a very small system. The dots that you can see here, I'll go into a little bit more detail around a couple of these particular precincts in the ecosystem because they're where the most activity is. We do look at our startup system and have been doing some surveying of it for quite a number of years now. And this is the latest published data that we have. And you can see here in 2021, we thought we had information around about 340 startups. We know that it's very difficult to get information around startups, and that's one of the challenges that we all have, I think, collectively. And it's also very difficult to get information around the ecosystem more broadly. So there's been a fair bit of work done, and we've recently implemented a whole bunch of things, including using some technology and AI to have a look at the system where we can collect information that's publicly released more easily. And I think this number is going to start to jump up. So what we're seeing over time is our system has kind of come off the bottom and is starting that exponential growth curve. It's pretty concentrated in a number of different areas, particularly around the professional technology, deep technology types of businesses, manufacturing, and so forth. Like most ecosystems, I think one of the big problems that we all have is the lack of equity in the system, and that gender equity is particularly a challenge for us in many different ways. So I'd be interested to hear if anybody's got any, really great programs, policies, ideas for how we address those issues. So as I mentioned in the pictures of when I showed you the map of South Australia, we've got a number of different innovation precincts that have opened up. Tonsley Innovation District is to the south, and it is the first one that was really started. Construction started on this particular precinct in around about 2012, and it was developed on what was an old car manufacturing site. It's a 61 hectare site, so it's a pretty big site. And it's been developed, so you can still see the remnants of the car manufacturing, what they call the MAB there, which was the assembly building, is part of the structure. It's now developed to the point where there are probably around about 1,700 or more people working in startups and innovative businesses there. There are about 35 businesses in the precinct now. There's a university, the Flinders University, attached to this precinct. And it's now quite a vibrant site that's growing up and developing products and services and startups and innovation in the largely advanced manufacturing areas, and also in energy and particularly hydrogen related activities, which we're very interested in here. We have a very deep penetration of renewable electricity into our grid. South Australia's gone from a grid of about 1% renewable energy 15 years ago to more close to 70% penetration of renewable energy into our grid across the whole state. So that's a pretty rapid escalation, and a lot of that innovation has been developed and implemented through various interactions with some of the startups in the ecosystem over time. The second sort of precinct that I want to talk about is the Adelaide Biomed City, and it's a very different sort of a precinct. The buildings that you can see here are the new Adelaide Hospital. Just remember that because it's important for the next thing I might talk to you about. But this is a new hospital that's only been open for about the last 5 or so years. Alongside of it here is a big medical research institute, the South Australian Health and Medical Research Institute. This building here is about to be, it's just coming out of the ground. It's an extension of the South Australian Health and Medical Research Institute. It's called SAMRI-2, has a proton therapy beam and facility embedded in it. And these other buildings along here are the health research buildings associated with some of the universities. On the other side of the road, we have a bunch of different facilities and buildings either in existence now or to be built, which are associated with the private sector. So early stage clinical trials and those sorts of things occurring here. So this is kind of more of a cluster than a precinct in some respects. Lots of different institutes and institutions in place in the health and medtech space, and is really now emerging as a very strong early stage clinical trial and health research district. The last sort of precinct that I want to talk to you about is Lot 14. This is the site of the old Adelaide Hospital. So these buildings that you can see here are actually heritage buildings. This site was a hospital from about the 1840s until 2017. The buildings that were heritage listed have been refurbished, and in 2019 started to be inhabited by startup businesses and a startup hub that's established here. This is a fairly large site as well, and it's a very large investment by our government in building an innovation precinct and ecosystem around the digital health space technologies. There's the Australian Space Agency is based here, and cybersecurity. We've got a large cybersecurity centre based here as well. There's a new building that's going to be built in the back. Eventually, this building, this site will be completed in about 2027, 28, and probably will house around about 6,000 people. There's currently about 1,500 people in here. The startup hub itself has about 60 startups in it. There are probably another 30 or so, maybe not that many, maybe another 20 or so out of the 137 established businesses that are already on the site. So the ecosystem in South Australia has grown very quickly over the last couple of years and come off a very low base, and is hopefully trending towards that sort of an ecosystem where you start to get halo effects. Like everybody, we're aspiring to have either zebras in our profit for purpose type ecosystem startup sector, or some unicorns. Those haven't yet emerged into our system, but we feel like we can see them on the horizon. So we're quite excited, and we've seen a number of really good exits in the last year or so, and those people recycling into the startup ecosystem. The real benefit of our approach that's had these very large sites set aside for building specific innovation districts is that they create a feel of density and depth where we don't, with a population of 1.3 million, really have that. So that's a very quick Cook's tour through where we are now and where we're hoping to go, and you know, our policy and programs to support that in South Australia have matured over the years along with the ecosystem as it matures. And that's me, probably slightly more than 6 minutes.
That's perfectly fine, Judy. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you, and so exciting to hear about the plenty initiatives of Adelaide and the many things you're doing for the startups in your city. Really exciting. And you know, like you said, you know, it got me excited too. I think you will have zebras and your unicorns in your horizon. So good luck with that.
We feel like we can see them. They're close.
They're running towards you.